Hi YouTube. Today's video is going to be the second portion of our Ninja Pants tutorial series, and today we're going to be drafting a scaled down model of our pattern using graph paper, and we're going to be using different grid points like navigating a map to grid out our pattern before we place it onto the full scale pattern that we're going to cut out to make our pants. So stay tuned and I'll show you how to draft this. So in today's video, we're going to be gridding our measurements onto graph paper in order to outline our pattern. And the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to make a frame for the area that your pattern's going to fit into. And the way to determine the size to make the frame is you're going to want to take your seat spread measurement is going to be the width, and the length is going to be 3 to 4 inches larger than your waist to ankle measurement. So after you get your frame established, my frame is 30 inches wide by 40 inches long. And after you get your frame established, you're going to want to establish a center line. But it's not actually a center line, it's going to be slightly off center because most people are a little bit bigger in the back than they are in the front. So my seat spread was 27.5 inches, and I'm going to add 2.5 inches to that to establish my frame, which is 30 inches wide. Another good thing about keeping it 30 inches wide or less is if you're using fabric that's 60 inches wide, you can simply fold the fabric in half to get it mirrored on both sides for your left and your right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to establish my center line. A total of 30 inches, I'm going to establish it at 14. And the reason that I've established it at 14 is because the back, this is the back, and this is the front. The back is usually larger on most people, so I've put my center line closer to the front than to the back to allow more fabric and more shaping in the rear of the garment. This is going to be our waist, and this is going to be our ankle, but when we take the measurements in a little bit, it won't be exactly this size. So the next thing we're going to want to do is establish points on your center line that correspond with the vertical measurements that you took when you were taking your measurements. And the first thing is you're going to want to establish the length 1.5 inch longer than your measurement. So my measurement was 36 inches from the waist. So the first thing we're going to want to do, I've already done, is I've moved the frame down 1 square, which to scale would be 1 inch, to allow for a little bit of extra shaping in the upper waistband in the back of the pants without it actually affecting the rest of the design. And I just found it easier to leave a little leeway at the top in case you want to make any alterations to the top of your garment. Because we're not designing this from the top down. We're designing this basically from the center outward. But the first line that we're going to want to make is going to be 36 inches down from our waistline, and the extra line I put in, I'm considering that the waistline. So I've gone ahead and edited the video and marked on the side so that I'm not wasting time counting squares. And I'm going to mark that, like I said, we're going to add an extra inch and a half of ease to our total measurement. Mine was 36, so I'm going to make a point on the grid right here, and I'm not going to draw the line in yet. I'm going to make a couple more grid marks. The next grid line that we're going to want to establish is going to be 12 inches down on the center line, and it's going to be the front crotch measurement, which is going to end up over here on the edge of our pattern. But for the sake of showing you how to do this, we're going to mark everything on the center line first. So 12 inches down would be right here, and I'm going to put a little X there. The next line we're going to make is going to be the waist to fullest part of the hip measurement, the measurement that we took at the side, and for me that was 9 inches. So I'm going to make an X there. And the next line we're going to make is going to be the waist to full hip measurement in the back, and mine was 11 inches. So I'm going to mark that on the grid there. And we only have one other horizontal measurement that we need to mark, and that's going to be our knee measurement. But that will get figured in after we put some of these crucial marking spots into the design. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to determine the width of our pant leg, and we're going to make it a little bit larger in the back than in the front, because the back of the leg needs a little more ease in it for when you're walking or bending. So my measurement was, for that, I think it was 12. I usually make, I know what size I normally make my leg opening, and that's 13 inches. So I'm going to mark over 6 and 7, and I'm going to add a ½ inch to each one of those for a seam allowance. So my X's are going to go right here, and I'm going to mark a horizontal line for that horizontal measurement. I really wasn't supposed to put these X's in yet, but since I did, no harm done. Next, we're going to make a horizontal line at our waist to full hip measurement at the side, our waist to full hip measurement at the back, and we're marking all these in the center, and we're making horizontal lines so we know where to grid our pattern. And the next line we're going to make is going to be the front crotch, the groin, the waist to groin measurement. Now we're going to make an X at the edge of our paper on the front, and this is going to be the front crotch point. And now we're going to go in what would be 1½ inches from the edge and make a line, a light line. Each one of these squares is scale. It represents 1 square inch for the full pattern, and we're going to shape the front fly of our pants from the grid point up to the part that this is going to be the part that crisscrosses. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark the rear seam for the seat measurement, and we're going to use the side measurement, the waist to full hip side measurement, which mine was 39, and we have to divide that by 4, which comes out to 9 3/4. But since our back is bigger than our front, I'm just going to go 11 inches in the back and 8 inches in the front. So our grid is going to be here. That's 8, and in the back it's going to be 11. Now I'm going to add a seam allowance to the back of 1.5 inches. The next thing I'm going to do is make that same mark on the waist to full hip measurement for the back, which was 11 inches. So I'm going to put a little dot here. And now, in order to determine where the back crotch falls, I drop on the gridded paper, I drop 2, so I'm going to make a horizontal line 2.5 inches lower than my crotch, very lightly, and now I'm going to mark this as the point on the edge, and I'm also going to mark on my waist. Even though we didn't do a waist measurement, I go in about 2 inches from my largest point on my butt, and I'm going to take that measurement all the way up to the top where we left that leeway. And now we're going to connect these dots using curves. And this, we're going to go outside of this X, and we're going to go inside of this X. And now we're going to shape a curve all the way up to our top. And this curve is very important to the movement of a garment, because it allows you to bend, and it gives you a little excess in the seat for movement. So now we have our front fly, and we have our back center seam. Now for the waistband, this is actually our waistline. Here we went 1 inch higher at the portion in the back. We're going to drop 1.5 inches down and make a mark. And now we're going to nicely blend the back of our pants to that. We're going to dip in the front and up at the same point to there. So it's going to be a nice contoured waist. This is the waistband up here. This is the back center seam. This is the front fly. Now we have to figure out where our knee bend is going to come in. And in order to do that, these are, each one of these is 1/2 centimeter. But for the sake of scaling it, we're going to pretend that each one of these is 1 inch. And each 1/2 centimeter on our tape measure is 1 inch. And we're going to start at our center waist, or our side waist, and that measurement for me was 24.5 inches. So I'm going to mark that at 12.5 centimeters. And now I have to check it against the crotch to knee inseam, and mine was 12.5 inches, so I'm too short there. So that means this is where we have to find this pivot point. So it would have to be 12.5. Let's try it here. And that would make almost 12 inches. So we're going to show where approximately 12.5 inches would be. And now we're going to try to get these lines to line up to both. And this is going to work for 12.5, because when we curve this seam, it's going to give us a little bit more so this was our mark. I should have X'd it so that I knew that that was our mark that we were. Yeah, this is our mark. So I always put the X's so that I know the mark. Now we're going to use our straight edge to take that down to our ankle. And we're going to add a little bit more curve into the knee. And it's very important in movement that if you're going to have a tapered leg, you also want to have a curvature, a slight curvature in your knee. That's what the pivot point is for, so you can decide where to put that. I'm not seeing why. I gotta look at the other one and see what is going. Okay, I got too much of a curve in here, so it's going. Okay, now the only thing we have left to mark is our back, and what we're going to do is we're going to count, we had the 17-inch measurement at the knee. We're going to mark our horizontal line for where our knee pivot was. Slightly bigger in the back. We're going to go 10.5, and that's going to give us a lot of ease in the knee. Now let's simply connect the dots. Connect the dots in a way that leaves a nice shape. patterns and see what differences, because I took a lot of time in tweaking this. Yep, I was going to add a little bit more here, but I like the shape of the back of the pants, and this is a rough sketch. You'd want to use that shape is better. I have too much going on. Now, there's one more thing. The pants crisscross at the front, and in order to find the center, it's going to be 7 inches, 6.5. It's going to be 6 inches, and now this line means nothing other than to show the center line. There's nothing that gets done with that, but what that does is it allows you to see how much ease you have from this measure. You have plenty of ease in the front crotch, front groin area. This piece will be the crisscross piece. You'll see how it works. You won't see how it works until the garment is made. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Part 3 of the series is going to be drafting it onto the big paper. And because we already have a model, a scaled down model, we know what shapes we're going to be looking for, and we're going to be able to have a much easier time getting it out onto the actual pattern. So thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and once again, thanks for watching.